Thanks so much for watching today's Drawing for Adults video brought to you by the Ann Arbor District Library and the Ann Arbor Art Center. Today we're going to be exploring shadows from a really vivid, colorful sunset using soft or oil pastels, depending on what you have at home. You could of course use something else as well, but so first things first, we are going to set our horizon line and also just lightly sketch in some trees, like a little tree line, or it could be a mountain line or something like that in the background. I do recommend trying not to have it perfectly straight or perfectly in the middle of your paper. After you have that, you're going to lightly sketch in some trees. Now these can be straight trees without any small little branches, kind of like a birch tree, or you can add details like I have done here by adding just some stylized branches. They're not obviously overly detailed or realistic. They're kind of funky little trees, but it can be a really helpful technique just to kind of have fun with it, be a little bit loose. They don't have to be perfect. I will say with tree branches, it's always a good idea to make sure that the further little tree branches get away from that trunk, that they get smaller versus getting larger or even staying about the same size. And even though it's subtle, you can kind of notice that in the front, closer to the bottom of the page, those trees are a little bit larger than the ones that are further away. And they're also, of course, further down on the paper. Now, you can see how I've drawn a sun about in the middle there of the sky. And so what I'm doing, if I think about the light coming from that direction, I'm sketching in where would those shadows fall. This is light sketching, and I can always adjust it later once I start adding color, okay? So very simple sketch there, and then once you're ready to start coloring, go ahead and do that. So you can see how I'm starting in with the sky. I am trying to use a lot of color with this drawing. So part of what I want to do is try to just pack in a lot of color without it looking like, I don't know, a box of crayons just exploded on my paper. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to primarily use warm colors here in the sky. And so you can see how I'm really taking my time layering in lots of layers of color. Now, if you're using soft pastels, if you have a fixative spray, that can be a really, really helpful tool to use while you're working so that it doesn't get so dusty, and it allows you to be able to work in more layers because you basically will color with your soft pastel and spray it, and then you can add more pastel on top of it without manipulating those layers underneath. So if you don't have that though, I know that you can use hairspray, but sometimes it can make the paper kind of yellow over time, so just something to kind of consider. You can also see how while I'm layering other colors, I'm also making sure that my white has enough yellow in it so that it really has that kind of glowing look of the sun, okay? And then because of that sun, those trees or mountains or whatever they are in the background, you can see how I've kind of lightened the top of them there so that it looks like the light is really affecting how we see that color. So you can find some photo references that are really similar, where the mountain range or trees or something like that in the background appear a lot lighter as a result of that sun being kind of glowing, on them. So I'm working my way now into the ground, and you can see that again, I'm trying to really just go with that luminous kind of glow. And so I've added a lot of yellow, especially there in the background towards the center, because that's where the sun is. And I'm also exploring a little bit with some mark making. And what that means is it's how I apply the material that I'm using. So you can see how I'm going with some almost like hatching lines, like little vertical lines that kind of look grassy, but it's also just for a really fun texture. And I'm throwing in some extra colors. It's so hard sometimes when doing landscapes to just go for very neutral, earthy tones, and that can be beautiful, but sometimes it's good to also push yourself in how you use color. So I'm trying to challenge myself a little bit here by putting this like really bright, almost like a coral kind of red-orange here also into the grass. And as long as I'm wanting the ground to be primarily green and I just use a lot of green, it's really okay if I also throw in some extra colors here, and it will really only enhance the look even more. Now, as I get closer to the bottom, I am darkening up my colors just a little bit because it's further away from that sun, and I'm starting to get to a point where I'm feeling like I can't do a whole lot until I start putting in those tree shadows. So I'm using a dark blue first and kind of laying like the dark blue and some other blues, greens, purples, kind of in that shadow space. And then I'm also layering on top of that some of the other colors that I used in those grasses, because I want to make sure that it doesn't look like there's just blue stripes on the ground, but instead that there are that it's the shadow on top of the colors that are already in the grass. Then for the trees, I'm using very limited black, so maybe as some accents. And if I do use black, I'm going to throw in quite a bit of other colors as well, such as blue and purple. And it's really fun when using a shadow and to add in as many other colors as you have. So if you've got other dark colors that you want to try, definitely go for it. But I hope you've enjoyed today's drawing video, and tune in with us next time.